Let's make a 6-tier chocolate cake. I've been wanting to make this chocolate cake for so long, and I finally plucked up the courage to do so. This cake was absolute heaven and gone in less than a day. I started off by creaming together 750 grams of butter and 750 grams of caster sugar. By the way, this is the recipe for 3 cakes. If you wanted the recipe for 1 cake, just let me know. I then added 12 medium eggs into the mixture and whisked that once again until it was thoroughly combined. Before adding 90 grams of cocoa powder and 660 grams of self-raising flour. It was honestly starting to get a bit tricky here, I'm not gonna lie. I don't think my bowl's ever been this full. I just allowed that to whisk on a very low setting before adding 9 tablespoons of milk. But by the end of it, we were left with this super creamy cake mixture. Then divide this cake mixture by 3, which was 1012 grams. Don't worry, I did the maths for you, you don't have to do it. It did take me about half an hour, but we're not going to talk about that. I then transferred my cake mixtures into my baking trays before baking them on gas mark 4 for around 30 to 40 minutes. This is how they were looking once they came out the oven. It's everyone's favourite cake because mine personally is Victoria's sponge cake. There is no cake better than Victoria's sponge cake. I'm not going to lie, chocolate cake is up there. I know you're probably thinking right now, didn't you say 6-tier cake at the start, but I've only made 3 cakes. You're right, I did only make 3 cakes, but I halved them to make extra cake. Life is just full of these amazing glitches. Once the cakes had cooled, I wrapped them up in some saran wrap and popped them into the freezer so they were easy to decorate. I then began preparations for the topping of the cake. I started off by making my ganache. I used 300 grams of chocolate and 250 grams of double cream. However, I then realised that wasn't going to be enough, so I just did the same thing again. I then put my ganache into the fridge for about an hour just to let it set. In the meantime, I unwrapped my cakes and slightly trimmed off the top. My cakes were still frozen at this point, so it was a little tricky to get the tops off, but we got there in the end. I would definitely recommend doing that before the cakes are frozen. I froze the cakes because it's a lot easier to decorate. I then trimmed the cakes in half once again, get 6 layers of cake, and then it was time to assemble the cake. Starting off with a little ganache on the bottom just to keep the cake stuck to the cake board. I then went over with my simple syrup, which is equal parts sugar and water, and then added a good amount of that ganache that we made earlier. Then I just repeated the exact same process for the rest of the cake layers, going in with the cake, the simple syrup, and the ganache. Also guys, I did it. I finally got a cake stand. Thank you so much for all the recommendations on my vanilla cake video, and if anyone's wanted the same cake stand, I found this one on Amazon. I'm not gonna lie, it was a lot easier to decorate with this cake stand than doing it on a plate. Just so you know, just expect loads of cake videos like this now, because making this cake was so much fun. I definitely want to make some more now and just test what I can do. Anyways, let's get back to the cake. Once I finished layering my cake, I did a decent amount of ganache over the top and just slowly spread that around. I feel like when you're decorating a cake, it just has to look like one big giant mess. Then somehow by the end of it, it just looks amazing. I did just carry on working on it until I had an even amount of ganache around the entire cake before using a palette knife to give it that messy chocolate cake look. I started off with the sides and then I worked my way up to the top. Then I just made the exact same pattern around the top, starting from the middle and working my way out. And that was the cake pretty much all done. I'm not gonna lie, making this cake has actually taught me quite a lot. I think next time I make chocolate cake, I'm going to use oil instead of butter. Anyways, that's all for today, and I hope you enjoyed this mini chocolate cake series. Bye!